Excuse me, Mr. Jared Reddick from Bowling for Soup. Do you have anything you'd like to say to my sloppy family?
Bitch! I am 1985.
Fuck yes.
If 2000s pop punk is defined by having fun, not taking yourself seriously, and writing impeccably catchy songs, almost nobody managed to hold on to that identity better than Bowling for Soup. As most of you probably know, they're best known for their songs Girl All the Bad Guys Want, and 1985. And although there were bands like Green Day, Sum 41, and Blink-182 that maybe had a little bit of a higher commercial peak and maybe a longer shelf life, all those bands would eventually turn away from their roots of goofing off and writing songs about skateboarding and the girl at the mall they had a crush on, to making much moodier, more quote-unquote serious music like Blink-182's Untitled album or Neighborhoods, and Sum 41's Screaming Bloody Murder. But that was never the plan for Bowling for Soup. Like when they said this,
I think rock and roll is really funny when it's serious.
they meant it. But at the same time, they also weren't a joke band. And while all the attention that earned them a Grammy nomination in 2003 didn't last much longer than the mid-2000s, Bowling for Soup still has one of the genre's most devoted fan bases, and the members of Bowling for Soup may have their hands in more modern pop culture than you realized.
What time is it? It's dancing time again.
So is Bowling for Soup just a relic of a bygone era, a snapshot of mid-2000s pop culture? Was their attitude of wholesome, fun-loving good old boys an anchor that drowned them in a sea of pop-punk bands turned emo? And what is their lasting impact and legacy? Those are the questions that I will try to answer in this video. And also, I'd like to thank Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. A virtual private network, or VPN for short, is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. Basically, watching Netflix without PIA is like paying for Ride the Lightning but getting Lulu instead. Private Internet Access protects you from the prying eyes of hackers and anyone else trying to snoop on your data, and Private Internet Access allows you to access region-locked content from all over the world. As you may know, Netflix, Disney+, Hulu, a lot of the other streaming platforms, a lot of them have different options depending on your location, but PIA helps you overcome all of that by allowing you to simply change your IP address to any one of 91 different countries. So if you want to check out PIA, just hit the link in the description of this video for an amazing offer, an 83% discount on PIA. That's just $2.03 a month and an extra 4 months completely free. Just hit the link in the description of this video. You may know Bowling for Soup as a pop-punk band from the mid-2000s, but the band's history actually goes all the way back to the mid-80s and has much more to do with metal than pop-punk. In 1986, their vocalist Jared Reddick befriended future Bowling for Soup guitarist Chris Burney while they were still in high school in Wichita Falls, Texas, bonding over their love of metal bands like Motley Crue and Quiet Riot, but it would still be a while before they would come together and join forces. Chris started a band called Slaw with future Bowling for Soup members Eric Chandler and Lance Morrill, while Jarrett started fronting a thrash band under the name of Terminal Seasons. No recordings of that band seem to exist, at least not that I could find, but Jarrett described their sound as being something like Testament, Slayer, and Pantera. But Jarrett's whole outlook on music would change while he was attending Midwestern State University, majoring in marketing and psychology, and one of his friends played him The Descendants.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to be a corporate psychologist, not only just the marketing side, but I really wanted to be sort of in the HR side of like for big corporations, being able to do drug and alcohol counseling and things like that. This kid that I met in college, my freshman year, played me The Descendants, and I was just like, whoa, like they're playing fast, and he can really sing, and they're singing about farts and girls, and like I know about those things.
And so with that, he started making his way into the world of pop punk, forming a band called Cool Fork in the early 90s with Eric and Lance, then another band called Rubberneck in 1994 with all the members who would eventually become Bowling for Soup. They took their name from a 1979 Steve Martin comedy bit called Bowling for Shit, sort of giving you a preview of where their heads were at as far as being very clear about wanting to have fun and never take themselves too seriously. Like, it would be kind of hard for a band called Bowling for Soup to ever do like some indie emo album. As Jarrett said on the band's website, it was never like, let's start a band and be real musicians. We got together in 94 because we discovered beer. Beer is really fun. And what better way to get free beer than being in a band? You'll notice that's been a recurring theme for the band over the years. But I think he was kind of downplaying things. Because Bowling for Soup are not just a bunch of idiots trying to get free beer and write these like goofy joke songs. Like, as much as I think they sort of want their audience to see them this way, even as early as their first album, which came out only 3 months after the band started, it was very clear that these guys had some serious songwriting chops. And if you're looking for pop punk that feels very reminiscent of early Green Day, well, I think you will find that in Bowling for Soup's self-titled debut.
Once again, my head is screaming. Gotta get her off my mind.
While it's definitely not front to back as great as something like Kerplunk, some of the highlights like 13 and Pesticide, I think really showcase how much potential this band had. They were like genuinely great power pop, really just about vocal harmonies and layers and hooks, with a lot more care for songwriting than what you would find from a lot of pop punk bands at the time. Like, you could take this out of the genre of pop punk, and at the end of the day, these are just fundamentally really well-written songs. From here, the band would continue writing and recording music, releasing a split in 1996 with another band from Texas called The Vims, but they really didn't start getting much attention outside their hometown until 1998, after the band relocated to Denton, Texas, about an hour and a half from Wichita Falls.
You know, we got veterans that are doing things too. I mean, All Time Low just had that song Monster that was
Oh
on,
yeah.
I think it was the biggest song like in the history of it broke some sort of radio record. Big song, man. You know, and that's again, it's all good, man. I never hate. I just congratulate.
And that was that. The band moved to Denton, signed to a local label, and in 1998, they would release 2 albums. Their second full-length album called Rock On Honorable Ones, which got them some decent radio play on local rock stations, but it was actually an EP that they released later that year called Tell Me When to Woe that would really mark the beginning of a new era for the band. And the strategy behind the release of it showed how seriously the band took things behind the scenes, probably informed by Jarrett's education and marketing. As one example of that, here's what the band posted on their website in 1998 while they were recording the EP. Our new EP will only be available through stores and possibly through the internet. The reason for this is simple. The success of Rock On Honorable Ones was tremendous. However, we have little proof to offer larger record labels due to the fact that most of our record sales were at shows. They want to know that we can sell records, and we can, but we must sell them through stores in order to monitor these sales, thus proving our loyal fan base and making our negotiations with the bigwigs easier. And the band had good reason to feel so confident in the EP's sales, because even though their material before this maybe to some people could have sounded like a band sort of accidentally, drunkenly stumbling upon some great melodies, with Tell Me When to Woe, they really doubled down on that emphasis on songwriting, with songs like The Bitch Song, Belgium, and Sucker Punch, all of which got even more radio play and remain staples of the band's live sets even to this day. So did it work? In a word, yes. Tell Me When to Woe would go on to sell over 10,000 copies, which even by 90s standards, when moving CDs was kind of the primary way of distributing things, for an independent pop punk band, that was no joke, and certainly proved the point they were trying to make. And so with numbers like that, it wasn't long before the music industry in general started to take notice, and the band soon caught the eye of Sony's subsidiary Jive Records, who cut the band a major label deal in 1999. The band released their major label debut called Let's Do It for Johnny in 2000, which was made up primarily of re-recordings of the band's earlier work, and to many fans serves as sort of like a greatest hits album of their early career. Unfortunately, Let's Do It for Johnny didn't do quite as well as the band had hoped, selling about 18,000 copies, which by today's standards would be amazing, but for them at that time was a little bit of a disappointment. For context, they had sold something like 20,000 albums out of the back of their van before that without the label's support, so 18,000 was a little bit of a step down, and so things with the label were off to a little bit of a rocky start. However, even with the band making less money, selling less records, and being on a label, which means having many more hands in the pot, taking cuts and percentages, even with all of that, they weren't discouraged.
We're obviously not working hard enough, so let's just keep working harder, you know?
And this determination to work even harder would land them back in the studio again to record their next album called Drunk Enough to Dance, which, thanks to the single Girl All the Bad Guys Want, would go on to change their lives forever. Girl All the Bad Guys Want went on to become a Billboard Top 100 hit, transitioning the band from rock radio to the much larger playground of pop radio, as well as even earning them a Grammy nomination and one of the most iconic music videos of the era. It's a song that manages to show off everything great about the band in a single track. It's an impossibly catchy piece of power pop that's funny, full of pop culture references and self-deprecation, but it does so in a uniquely charming way that comes off as earnest and never just like a joke song. On the surface, it's more or less a song about unrequited love, but it's also a song about just generally feeling out of place in the 2000s, when the popular trend among rock bands was being really dark and angsty and edgy, or as the song puts it, her CD changers full of singers who are mad at their dad. And the music video goes even further to drive home their personality, parodying a ton of popular bands at the time like Stained, Limp Bizkit, and Slipknot, and does a great job of illustrating how silly and just kind of overwrought a lot of music was at the time, without ever being too heavy-handed or mean. Like, once you think about it, the guy from Stained kind of really does look sad and constipated. I think after seeing this video, like, I'll never unsee that. While Drunk Enough to Dance would see a couple other singles like Punk Rock 101 and Emily, the band wouldn't surpass the popularity of Girl All the Bad Guys Want until their next album called A Hangover You Don't Deserve, which spawned their most popular song, 1985. In 1985 was a massive success for the band, easily surpassing the popularity of Girl All the Bad Guys Want, hitting number 23 on the Billboard Top 100, and earning the band their first gold record. And this song was inescapable. First of all, because of the absolutely iconic music video, which had the band dressed up as all these popular 80s artists like Run DMC, Motley Crue, Whitesnake, and George Michael, which was basically running constantly at the time across MTV, VH1, and Fuse, and even now sits at 72 million views on YouTube.
Make it stop. When did Motley Crue become classic rock?
And most of you watching this probably remember the song, but did you know that it's a cover? It's true. 1985 was originally written by the Maryland band SR-71, which is best known for their song Right Now.
Why you always kick me when I'm high?
SR-71 released their original version just 2 months before Bowling for Soup released theirs, but broke up shortly afterwards. And according to Jarrett, SR-71's vocalist Mitch Allen, who wrote the song, started shopping it around to other bands. And Bowling for Soup was actually a little bit hesitant about the idea of covering it in the first place.
And I don't mind saying it was Kerrang! Magazine. Our relationship with them is still great. You know,
Okay.
it's been nothing but amazing to us. But yeah, they sent someone down. They were just like, hey, we want to do just some kind of crazy photo shoot or whatever. So we took naked pictures in my kitchen, which happened to be yellow. And it's just like us naked in my kitchen with just food everywhere and all over us and stuff. And then you fast forward, you know, I don't know, 15 years or so, they elected us the second stupidest band of all time. And one of the reasons that was cited was these guys did naked photos in their kitchen or whatever. It's like, we did that for you guys.
Yeah,
you
your
know?
magazine.
Yeah. So that's what I talk about in that song. It's a true story.
And while it was always a great song, with a few tweaks to the lyrics, Bowling for Soup managed to make it their own in a way that actually almost makes the original sound like it's the cover. Compare this
Baby just hit the wall. She never had it all. One Prozac a day. Husband's a CPA.
to this.
Baby just hit the wall. She never had it all. One Prozac a day. Husband's a CPA.
Pretty clear winner, right? But the hits didn't stop there. And with strong singles like Almost and Ohio, Come Back to Texas, the band had proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were more than capable of writing amazing songs all on their own. And with their next album, The Great Burrito Extortion Case, their song High School Never Ends would continue to show off their ability to write these like very endearing, relatable, and incredibly catchy pop punk songs.
The whole damn world is just as obsessed with who's the best dressed and who's having sex.
And while this album is seen by a lot of people as their best work, it would unfortunately be the last big hit the band got before their commercial success sort of began to dwindle. The band was extremely confident in their next release, which was Sorry for Partyin' in 2009, but on the label side of things, they weren't quite so optimistic. As Jarrett said in 2011, Sorry for Partyin' was the album we thought would be the one to take us to that next level and be the one that makes Bowling for Soup more than just the band who had a hit a few years ago and would give us the longevity that we think we will have. Obviously, things didn't happen that way. We split with Jive 4 weeks after it came out, and no song ever went to radio, and there was never any real push or anything. There's no bitterness, but we had to come off the road and make a decision. Are we going to go fight and do this thing, or are we going to back ourselves into a corner and lick our wounds and act like we didn't know what to do?
A few years ago, we got dropped from Jive Records right after Sorry for Partyin' came out, and it was a pretty disappointing time for us, but we had to make a decision. We either go at it alone, do it all ourselves, and triumph, or we give up. So we made Fishin' for Woos, and we triumphed. But we triumphed because of you guys.
And so, once again, just like they did when their first major label debut missed the mark, the band picked themselves up and pushed ahead, releasing 4 full-length albums since getting dropped by the label, all of which came out on the band's own label, KSO Records, which they originally created for the release of their debut album way back in 1994. And so if you're wondering where are they now, let me answer that for you. Bowling for Soup is still incredibly active, having released their most recent album, Pop Drunk Snotbread, in 2022. Jarrett is on TikTok a lot and loves promoting and reacting to smaller creators. And although you may remember them for songs like 1985 and Girl All the Bad Guys Want, if you're a little bit younger than I am, you may be more familiar with them for writing the theme song to the show Phineas and Ferb.
There's 104 days of summer vacation, and school comes along just to end it.
Or even as the voice of Chuck E. Cheese.
Just scratch it off so you look like him when he's a scratching hound.
Pretty crazy, right? They've also happily leaned into tons of jokes about the band, most notably recording a cover of Stacy's Mom, after years of people mistakenly thinking that it was their song to begin with.
Stacy's mom has got it going on. She's all I want, and I've waited for so long.
In 2022, Jarrett also began releasing music as a country artist under the name Jarrett Ray Reddick, eventually putting out his first solo album called Just Woke Up.
I always wanted to make a country record. I didn't know in what capacity I wanted to do that. I did know that if Bowling for Soup did it, like if we did Bowling for Soup Goes Country, that it would instantly be a novelty, whether it's successful or not. Like we wouldn't be taken serious.
So he went solo, and his country album actually ended up crossing over pretty well with both country fans and Bowling for Soup fans, as there's always been these sort of little hints of country in the band's lyrics and music, and his lyrics as a solo artist still maintain this blend of like honesty and humor that he's known for in Bowling for Soup.
Singing a punk rock band. And one time in Las Vegas, Garth Brooks said he was a fan.
And so just to sort of wrap all this up, what I think is really interesting and special about Bowling for Soup is that line between humor and sincerity in music can be incredibly thin. If you get it wrong one way or the other, you can be a little bit uptight or a little bit too goofy and come off as a joke band. But Bowling for Soup has always managed to walk that line better than just about anybody else. And although they may have faded a little bit from the mainstream limelight after a few incredibly successful years, their loyal and passionate fan base has always stuck with them. And in a sea of bands from that era who would end up going on to become problematic or controversial, Bowling for Soup has really just sort of always remained the same funny, relatable guys who were just sort of refreshingly genuine, and I think that really counts for a lot. And I think ultimately it comes down to this. Behind the veneer of being these sort of hapless, beer-loving Texas good old boys is a group of really deceptively talented, intelligent, hardworking musicians who have remained consistent for 30 years now and have always found a way to survive in changing times. All right, my friends, that's that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. And also, I would like to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. Patrons get all my videos early. I sometimes do Q&As and giveaways, and there's also a way to have me review your music. So if any of that sounds cool, hit the link in the description of this video. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.